Thanks for coming to our beautiful Park Ravne 2. Today's topic is from the fear to the freedom. In order to talk about it, we need to define those two terms. The fear. What is the fear? The fear is unpleasant feeling. It's emotion. The opposite to fear is anger. And both fear and anger does not lead us in the right direction. The fear comes when we can't control things. And when it comes to the grades, if it is a smaller grade, smaller fear, anxiety, then we are not talking about the big things. For example, we watched the horror movie, fear. But then, when the things that we cannot control are on a larger scale, then we get panicked. For example, something is totally out of our control, we are aware of that. And the top, the largest fear that's in front of us is when we can do nothing about it, and it's coming, and it is so overwhelming that it is terrifying to us. For example, when they teach us the fear of death, something that we can't do anything about it. The freedom. The freedom has no limits, limitless, unlimited. Freedom to talk, freedom to walk, freedom to work, freedom to think, freedom to express himself or herself. Freedom, no limits. How to walk this road from the fear to the freedom? We live in society based on the fact that the elites, a very small number of people, today we can quantify it to about 2,500 super billionaires who owns in material things almost everything, more than 90% of all possessions on our planet, from the land to the resources, and in economic senses, corporations, media, politics, and other resources. So, we have those who have almost everything. And sometimes we probably ask ourselves, how come people like Bezos or Gates or Zuckerberg, who are $100 or $200 billion worth, want something more? And what is it that they want? It seems that it becomes much more than the money. Because with the money, you can buy a house, you can buy a yacht, you can buy a plane, you can buy 10 houses, but you can't live in 10 houses at the same time. So, they go one level higher. The game of control, the game of power, the game of manipulation, with hundreds, thousands, millions, and finally billions of people. The way to do it, and the most effective way throughout the ages, for the last few thousand years, of our documented history was through fear. When you have people who fear, it's very easy to control them. The less they know, it's much easier to manipulate with them. What does this topic have to do with our Bosnian Pyramid project and with us today? Actually, a lot. The true history of humankind is one of the essential for all of us. The more we know, the more power we have. I often hear question, so what's the problem with the elites and the Bosnian Pyramid project? What's the problem of recognizing their existence? Well, it is much more than another archaeological discovery. It's also about the time. So now we are not talking about 5, 6, 7,000 years, as they teach us in schools. And the history of advanced societies started with Sumerians, then Babylon, Akkad, Assyria, Hittite, ancient Egypt, ancient India, ancient China. This is just the last cycle of humanity. Before this one, there was another one, which ended in global catastrophe 12,000 years back, with the end of the last ice age. Well, people would say, so what? There was another cycle of humanity. Yes, there was another, and another, and another. In the last 100,000 years, we have had at least 5 civilizational cycles. So what? Well, people would be asking questions. What was it before? How was it? How people lived? What did they know about technology, about spirituality? And then we would realize that people then, they knew some secrets that are hidden from us today. What secrets? Well, they knew that us, humans, that we are very complex beings, consisting of several entities. The first one, the first entity, or the first level is the physical level. We live one life with this physical body. It is for one use only. And then we disappear. But the second entity is our soul. And soul lasts almost forever. And that's very important. If it is almost forever, it means that there is really no need to fear the physical death. And the fear of physical death is the origin of all other fears. Fears of losing material things, jobs, money, houses, cars, saving accounts, or even dear ones. So once we go over that fear, everything changes in our life. And with the simple fact that we recognize that every one of us has the soul inside, as a matter of fact exactly here, would make that life difference. I said that our soul is almost forever, because at one point in universe it was created by Creator in order to experience different lives, different bodies, different planets. So This life is just one of our soul's experiences. Before this one, there were many on this planet and many on other planets, and there will be plenty of them in the future. On this planet, in different solar systems, in different star constellations, in different galaxies, and even in different universes. Once we are aware of that fact, everything really changes in our perspective. And that's not all. There is a third entity, and that would be a spirit. A spirit is a divine light, also within our body. So our physical body acts as the protection for our soul, and our soul protects the spirit. And that's our direct link with the Creator, with the Divine, with the God. And it's so important to know that we can even reach the Divine in us. You know how many holy books are saying the God is everywhere around us and within us. And that would be a spirit. And the spirit is forever. So we have at least those three entities. Once we become aware of that, then the fear disappears. Well, the elites are aware of this. In order to control us, what they do, they limit us. They take our freedom by focusing us only on one dimension of our life, our physical being. And they instill fear in all aspects of our life. For example, in academia, you have assistant professors, you have professors. Assistants are afraid to say something wrong because professors might fire them. If they fire them, they lose the salary, they lose the paycheck, they lose the money. Consequently, they lose the house, they lose the cars, they lose their wives, they lose their way of living. So they live in fear. The same thing goes for the corporate world. Junior managers are afraid what the senior managers will say. The same thing goes in the media world. Journalists, they care what they're going to write because the editor might fire them. So, the fear in all aspects of our life. People thinking if they lose their jobs, they're going to lose their way of living. So the elites are very smart. By limiting us on our 5 physical senses and our physical dimension, they can have full control of our life. Indeed, we do have 5 physical senses. We can hear, we can see, we can smell, we can taste, we can touch. And that's how we create the picture of our physical reality. But our physical senses are extremely limited. For example, what we can hear is on the scale from 20 Hertz to 20 kilohertz. We don't hear above 20 kilohertz. It is called the ultrasound. As we are getting older, like 2 of us, we are getting grays in our hair. We can hear less and less, 19 kilohertz, 18, 15, 10. If we live in a marriage for 20 or 30 years, we don't hear our wives at all. About 20 kilohertz ultrasound. We cannot hear, but we can measure. Animals, dogs, especially cats, they can hear much more than we do. But still, it's very limited. We don't hear megahertz, we don't hear gigahertz. We don't hear below 20 hertz. It's called infrasound. Very deep sounds. If we could hear a little bit more, our world would look completely different. The same thing goes for our eyesight. We can see in a very, very limited range those 7 colors. LGBTIQ+. Imagine that we can see a little bit more. I used to have a cat, and that cat would focus somewhere about half a meter above my head. Then I was looking, I couldn't see anything. What he saw, I don't know, but sometimes he would simply follow something in the air. Entity, spirit, an extraterrestrial, I don't know. But imagine if we could see a little bit more, then this whole world would look completely different. Well, besides 5 physical senses, we have spiritual senses. We have 30 of them, 30. At least 30 of them. Again, when it comes to the words, it's very important to define them. I mentioned spiritual world, I mentioned spirituality. When I was younger, a few decades ago, in the countries of Yugoslavia, communist country, or Ukraine or Soviet Union, they were teaching us spirituality. It's a religious and religion. Let's forget religion and religious view. That's one thing. Faith is another thing. Spirituality is another thing altogether. For me, spirituality is development of spiritual abilities or spiritual senses. So we can sense the world beyond the physical reality. Physical reality, we feel with the physical senses, 5 of them. Spiritual reality, we feel with the 30 spiritual senses. And they would be, the first one. You know, when you go to the tunnels, we have trained our guides to do a little experiment. We ask them to ask our guests to open their hands and place them a little bit above that ceramic block K2. The reason why we want them to start feeling the energy. That is not a physical sense. That's the first spiritual sense. And it's, as a matter of fact, very easy to develop this sense. We can do it tonight. What we do, we just open our hands, get them close to each other, like this. You can do that. And very soon, you will feel warmth, little resistance. Anybody doing that? Yes, in the back. Okay, let's see. Can you feel little resistance, little sensation in your fingers? Yes, no, yes, no, anyone? Yes, good. So, what we do now, we feel the energy field. Some people call it colloquially auric field. We have 7 fields around us. The first one is auric field. So, feeling the energy is the first spiritual sense. The second one is seeing the energy fields. And we can develop it fairly quickly. When you put 2 fingers next to each other, just 1 centimeter apart, you focus your eyesight in between those fingers you will see a little energy field around our fingers. Can anybody see it? Yes? No? Yes? Can you see something? And then you start playing. You move it left and right. Seeing the energy fields. And then the next one. The energy around us is not really white as we can see it right now. It has different colors. Different colors have different meanings. Red color, for example, color,
Strongness.
temperament, dynamism, but also aggressiveness, violence. Blue, green, health, love, white, spirituality. And then we can see our chakras. As you know, besides physical body, we have our energy body. When you have energy, you have energy flows. And this energy flows through 7 big intersections on the level of our physical body. 13 altogether, but 7 here. They're called chakras in Eastern traditions. And they should be aligned, they should be balanced. But since we've been exposed to so much stress in the real life, they go off the balance. And they get smaller. And the energy flow got discontinued. Then we got the problems, which we called diseases. So we are able to see the chakras. And then with the time we are able to see the colors of our chakras, spiritual senses. And then with the time we are able to develop another one. We can communicate with our thoughts. Telepathy is another spiritual sense. I often tell the story when I was living in States, in Houston. Then I would call my parents in Sarajevo. So when I decide to call them, first what you do, you create the thought, the brain waves, and they go to the universe. And who is the best antenna for our brain waves? Our mothers. So first I think, okay, I'm going to call my parents in Sarajevo. Then I get the phone. At that time those were classic fixed phones. The phone is ringing in Sarajevo. My father is answering the phone call. Oh, your mother told me a minute ago that you are going to call. Because she sensed that. She received a message. She is the best antenna. Telepathy. Unfortunately, nobody is teaching us how to develop these spiritual senses. Well, in the marriages, people who live for a very long time, sometimes it's enough that the partners look at each other and they know what they think. That's another story. Ability to move objects with the power of our mind is called telekinesis. That's another ability that we have, another spiritual sense. Well, this is great ability, and it goes so far that we can move objects, we can move mountains, we can cut this planet in half. Obviously, as a society, we are not developed enough to have ability to use telekinesis. And maybe the most important is movement through space and time. Teleportation. Of course, we have another form of moving through space and time. One of them is astral projection. Astral projection is controlled way how to move your soul. Once you remove the brakes, then you are able to move the soul in the controlled way. While in States, decades ago, the remote viewers, which used to work for the military before, but after the Cold War was over, they started sharing their knowledge with the public through the books. And you were able to master those techniques that they knew. You have to be completely relaxed. You literally need to relax every muscle in your body. And once in theta state, you are able to control the movement of your soul. You leave the body, you go to the roof, you look your subdivisions, and then you can start moving. Not easy task. It takes months to master this technique. So astral projection is the first step in teleportation. But the real teleportation means that you move your whole body, not only your soul, but the body. And you would need two elements. The first one is technique, and the second one is energy field strong enough. And it seems that the sites like pyramid sites and megalithic sites, long time ago, in the previous cycle of humanity, before the end of the last ice age, when our mother planet was much stronger. So when you had pyramid sites, pyramid amplifying the energy of the mother planet, it creates very strong energy fields. And once you have them, then you can start moving through those fields. When our planet was the strongest, during very specific dates, summer solstice, because that day the daylight is the longest, 2/3 of the day, the sun rays are the strongest, and our mother planet is the healthiest, creating the strongest energy. Pyramid amplifying the strong energy, you have energy fields strong enough to move through them and do your teleportation activities. And then you can choose where to go. Today, through the educational system, instead of teaching our kids how to become creative, they teach them only how to learn few things which they claim they are facts, in most cases they are not, and pass the exam. The moment they do that, they forget all of that. Imagine this scenario. You go to the pyramid sites, Egypt, Mexico, Peru, Tibet, Bosnia, or you go to megalithic site. It can be Stonehenge, or Avebury Hill, or Karnak, or Rugemelchiri, during specific dates, and you are able to move through space and time. And instead of going to school, where they teach you that Napoleon in 1799 went to conquer the Egypt, instead of that, you go to 1799 and see for yourself if Napoleon was existing, if he moved the army from France to Egypt, and if he really conquered Egypt, and if he really spent that night in the king's chamber and had that terrified situation. So, for me, the pyramids, the megalithic sites, were field schools of the past. On those sites, they were able to develop our spiritual senses. And why is that important? Because that would give us freedom. Instead of relying on educational system where they teach us stuff they want, and actually they don't teach us to be creative, to learn, Instead of that, by developing spiritual senses, we are able to get to know anything and literally everything. To move through space, not only this planet, and to move through time. For example, like Rudolf Steiner, the guy who established theosophy. He moved billions of years in the past. So now we are coming to the major thing. By going back to developing our spiritual senses, we will open the door to our freedom. Physical senses, physical world. Spiritual senses, spiritual world. Together we get the knowledge about the everything. And once we become free, it becomes irrelevant who's the president or prime minister or ministers. They become irrelevant. They cannot rule our lives. What they say through their media, CNN or ABC or NBC or MSNBC or ZDF or BBC, becomes irrelevant because we have our ways to know, to learn, to get to the knowledge. So, the biggest effort is done by the elites to keep us in physical reality only. And those who have gifts, there are many people who have gifts, who can see more than other kids, who can heal, who can see the future. What they do, they laugh at them through the educational system, through media, even through their parents. And those kids, gifted kids, what they do, they don't share those information with anyone else. They go back to the physical reality only. So really, here is the fight, whether we are going to open ourselves to our abilities or we're going to play their game and stay only within the physical world where fear resides. Religion, the holy books. If we think a little bit about the holy books, for example, the Bible, the Old Testament, which was written in Kabbalah. Kabbalah, very powerful symbols. They are much above our alphabet. One symbol would require at least 1 page of explanation. But once you translate it into different languages, and once you get the Bible that we have it today in English, for example, one of the major things is that God created man. In reality, through the Kabbalic symbols, the explanations was much, much more complex, and it was talking about several processes in the universe through which the life on the planet came to existence. But when you simplify things, when you say God created man, it means God was the one who created us. And in the churches, they are telling us God created the man, fear the God. The God has created us, not because he needed someone who will fear him or her. He created us because he loved us. So, the binding element between us is the love, not the fear, as they show us through the different religions. So, the way that we need to go from the fear to the freedom is not a short way. It's not an easy way. And in the real life, as we were able to see in the last 2 or 3 years, It's the way where we are getting blackmailed. You won't be able to travel if you don't do this. You're going to lose your job if you don't do that. Every man is your potential enemy. Social distancing. So they based everything on fear. But once we see through this, we will realize it's just a game in which they want to control us. We are social beings. We are beings based on handshaking, hugging, kissing, not on social distancing. It's not the fear that should rule our lives, it's love that should rule our lives. 17 years back we started this project. At that time it was archaeological project only. Very soon we realized archaeology is not enough to give us answers. That's why we went through many other scientific disciplines and expertise. And then we realized that this energy aspect was extremely important. Pyramids are energy amplifiers. And that's something that can be measured. If you can measure it, you can scientifically prove it. And then when you think about the ancient builders, you see that they were facing the same challenges like us today. Energy. We need energy for everything. Just our concept of energy is rather primitive. 300 years back, coal, thermal power plants. 150 years back, oil and gas. And then we have the way we do our electricity, we have our nuclear energy. From Chernobyl to Fukushima and back, we see how much harm we are doing to our planet. And every form of energy gives the opportunity to the elite to get richer and richer. The energy we have, limited, dirty, expensive. Producing elites, a very few people who print the money, who have fully control on 99% of our resources. Imagine that we change this concept of energy, that we have unlimited, clean, and free. Every day we lose 99.9% of the energy, the sun energy. But as long as the corporations cannot make money on the solar energy, it won't become major share in our energy production. They need profit. This is the energy that's coming every day to our planet. It's more than enough for all of our needs. And when you add stuff like the pyramid energy, that improves molecular structure of the water, of the food, it develops our spiritual abilities, and so on. We are getting the winning combination. Once we change the concept of energy, instead of dirty and limited and expensive, to clean and unlimited and free, we change the social organization of humanity. No more elites. And these are the reasons why elites don't like our project, among others. Our project is much more than another archaeological discovery. It's about the new concept of energy. And you see, from science and archaeology and energy, we went to healing, spirituality, with this beautiful park that became cultural oasis. We are offering much more, book promotions, nutritionism, concerts, and yoga. meditations, different concept of living, harmony with the nature. Instead of what they offer us, transhumanism. And again, we have elites, those who think that by combining with the artificial intelligence, they're going to get their life forever. And those who will be at the level of slaves, who will be extension of technology, most of us. This is the future they aim for us. We are saying no. Future in harmony with the nature. Technology, yes, but to serve us. So, this project is local, but it's global also. And I think that we are very proud that we are running something like this. And sometimes fear makes us think that we can't change our future, that we can't change the situation. Well, we can. We have proven here that we can. Once we change ourselves, we start changing people around us, and we change the ambient around us, and we change one by one more and more oases. And we change our future. So we are in charge. I think it's extremely important to understand that. So, from the fear to the freedom, everyone should do their part. Thank you very much. Elena is friends from the United States, and I just got the feeling that I should ask you to come to the stage, and we will see now why.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Well,
Tell us something on the subject.
Yes. To give you a little bit of a background, I guess, why Dr. Sam invited me to speak. My other half, Alejandra, and I have, well, my background is, I'm a pharmacist, licensed pharmacist for many years, went into functional medicine. 2007 merged into the quantum realms of energy medicine. And about 5 years ago, Alejandra and I decided to read frequencies of people and places. And it is so relevant, of course, to what you're speaking about today. And we've been actually reading thousands and thousands of people, including pyramids, ancient sites. And there was so much that we started to share with people. And one of the biggest things about fear, the state of fear and going into freedom for Alejandra and I, for our community, global community, we realized that the only reason we're allowing ourselves to be in the state of hijacking, what we call hijacking, or the victimizations, is allowing ourselves to see the world through the lens of lower vibrational frequencies, because everything in the universe vibrates. We all emit energy, and every emotion has a specific frequency. So how many of you have heard of frequencies before? Great. Okay. So every emotion has a frequency. Actually, we just recreated our own scale. We were using a little different scale, and we broke down the scale, which I didn't share with you, into 5 different aspects. Part 1 has to do with the scale of victimization, and these are all of the frequencies below the frequency of 200. So 20, like destruction, 30, 50, which is manipulation, and this is actually what Dr. Sam references a lot today, and in most of your other talks, is why we're being manipulated. For example, the frequency of COVID is 55. Okay, the frequency of most social media, the frequencies of media that we listen on the news to, is also vibrating in that frequency of 55. It's dissociation, it's a frequency of manipulation. Then we have frequency of 75, which is grief, 100, which is fear, 125 is unfulfilled desire, 150 anger, 175 is pride, 200 is the first bridge that we call activization. It's a bridge of courage, heroism. So there's a big gap between victimization, which is the matrix of manipulation, where most of humanity resides as of today, and then moving into activation phase. And activation lasts from frequency of 200 to frequency 499. And then we have a frequency of something that's called an inspiration, stage of inspiration. And these are frequency of 500, which is love, flow. This is where creativity begins, right? You go into 540, joy, bliss, 600, peace. And then 700 is illumination. So that's the next stage. And then we've measured a couple of avatars, actually, that have walked this planet of a frequency of 1,000. And that is the frequency of what we call the inner essence, the divine spark that exists within each and every one of us. So again, this illusion of separation is truly an illusion of separation. And overall, we've measured the collective consciousness of humanity, of where we are today. And we looked at so many different generations, starting with baby boomers, and where we are today. And what's interesting is the overall collective conscious frequency of humanity is 125. So last year we were at 100 collectively, which is fear, and it was so amplified by everything that's been going on with COVID and social distancing. Now we're at 125, which is unfulfilled desire, so we're all desiring to change. And some people say to us, well, I'm not that frequency, I'm not doing that. But we have to all remember that we're all connected. So if you know someone in your life that is fearful, it's a great opportunity for all of us to reflect inside and see which part of ourselves we have not transmuted yet, we have not integrated yet. Because it's a recognition that yes, there are people that we call elites, yes, there are people that are playing shadow roles in our lives, but it's important to recognize also that everyone plays an important role. And it's up to us which side we choose to play on. So most of you guys, I'm sure, are here playing on the side of love and light. So it's important to recognize that and to really stand and shine bright. And then they have absolutely no way of influencing your frequency. But 125 is where we are today. So we've looked at all these different generations. And there's something that is absolutely unique that is happening on this planet. And that is the Alpha generation. How many of you have heard of Alpha generation? Okay, so Alpha generation is born, they started to be born in the year of 2012. And they're going to be born until 2025. And they are absolutely unique based on all the other generations that we've read. They all incarnate at the frequency of 500. So if most human beings incarnate at a frequency of 100, okay, the Alpha generation is coming in at a really high frequency. So they're completely different beings that are coming onto this planet. So it's important that we also address, if you're parents or grandparents, that you look at your children through the lens of being open, what it is they're here to teach us, right? Because these children are also requiring a different angle, a different way of how we can parent them, how we can love them, and how we can encourage for them to be more creative. Because actually we're all creative. That's one thing that we all have. Even though we have these lower frequencies in all of us, creativity for humanity is really high. And also the level of personal growth is really high. Intuition is something the younger generation is born with really enhanced aspects of clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, claircognizance. So it's important that we encourage younger generations to really expand that. And I think by the year, we've looked at, by the year 2025, they're going to be the 25% of the human population. So that frequency, the high frequency, that we're all seeking, when is humanity going to shift? The younger generation is really what is contributing to the big shift that's coming up to this planet.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
If I wasn't afraid already being cold, and then this happens. Talk about fear. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for being open to listen. Because how do you get rid of fear is by listening. Listening to yourself and listening to each other. What can I add to these beautiful two people that have shared with you? My background also is in healthcare. My background was in data analytics. So I looked at a lot of information in healthcare and then created programs that drive behavioral change. And I was living an American dream. I also lived in the United States, and then I came back to Bosnia. But one thing with the American dream is that in order for it to be an American dream, you have to be asleep. So then I woke up and I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is actually a nightmare. But then a beautiful journey started. So I'll go from frequencies and from the body and the mind and the soul and the spirit. I'll go into biology a little bit here. When you are afraid, and there are 5 basic fears that we all share. Number 1, fear of death. Everyone has fear of death. And the next one is the fear of loss of loved ones. Then the next one is fear of illness or disease. The next one is the fear of economic issues. And finally, the fear of criticism. So those are the 5 basic fears that we all share. Now think about these last couple of years, and then think about your life in general. Last 5 years, if you say something, if you speak the truth, fear of criticism, fear of loss of loved ones, fear of what's going to happen with the economy. Am I going to lose my own health? And then will I die? Myself. And as Dr. Sam said earlier, once you start thinking about the fear of death, and if you can conquer that by listening, by understanding, by experiencing that you are a lot more than just this physical body, then suddenly all these other fears are, well, what's the worst that can happen? I can die, or they can die, but I'm no longer afraid of death. So suddenly it starts opening your whole mind and your whole heart. And then when it comes to biology and this amazing mechanism, this body of ours that we are inhibiting, when you are afraid, there are only 3 options for you in your life. Your central nervous system has been created to protect you, and you can either fight, you can either flee, or you can either freeze. So you will either freeze, you're going to fight, or you're going to flee. You're going to just get out of there. Those are the only 3 options. When you start fearing less, this is how you become fearless. You fear less, and then you fear less, fearless, fearless, fearless. Suddenly I'm fearless. When you do that, you can become more creative. There's a lot more options than just to fight, or to be frozen, or to flee. And this is what starts opening your heart, starts opening your mind, and then you start discovering these amazing frequencies that we just heard about. You start discovering these additional capabilities that you do have. And then suddenly magic starts happening, and you're sitting next to Dr. Sam, and you're sitting next to Elena here in Magical Park, Ravne, and you are still afraid. I'm not going to say I'm not afraid, but I fear less. And I'm using fear as GPS to understand. Why am I afraid? Of course, there's a lot of people looking at me. How will they react to what I'm saying? But all of that stuff does it really matter? It doesn't. We're sharing, we're learning, we're growing, and that's why we're here, to experience ourselves and experience each other. That's at least my story.
Wonderful. Anyone else wants to contribute?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, first time here for me, I'm wondering of the pace of discovery. Are you taking care that you're not discovering too fast? Because if you can go back in the history with your memories, you can discover very easily where to go in the tunnels and where to find the right way to the pyramid. Are you taking care of that you're not killed by being too fast?
You're asking if we are going too fast. Some people are telling us we are going too slow.
Yes.
Archaeology is a science, and there is scientific methodology we need to apply. There are some archaeological questions that we need to answer, like what? What is this? It's a pyramid complex. And who built it? More advanced civilization. and when it was built 30,000 years back, and how we can see superior concrete on the Sun Pyramid. And finally, why? What was the purpose? Energy amplifiers. So as we can see, majority of the questions we already got answered. In some instances, for example, Egyptology and Egyptian pyramids, after 200 years, we don't have almost a single question answered. We don't know who really built Egyptian pyramids. The bedtime stories about the 4th dynasty, pharaohs, Cheops, Khepri, and Mycerium, it's simply not true. When? 4,550 years ago? Simply wrong. What? Tombs for the pharaohs. So we don't have science there. We still need to answer the major questions in the case of Egyptian pyramids, where the most of the money was spent for the longest time. The same goes for Chinese pyramids, or Teotihuacan in Mexico, and most other stuff. So from that aspect, we have done a lot in a rather short period of time. Archaeologically speaking, we have at least 6 pyramids, tumulus complex, and huge network of underground tunnels. When it comes to the tunnels, 6 entrances, Ravne 3, Ravne 4, Ravne 2, Ravne 5, KTK, 2,650 meters, 140 meters clear tunnels, 65, 25, 170. 3 kilometers of prehistorical tunnels is a lot in archaeology, much more than anywhere else, but less than 3% of the original tunnel network. We discovered entrances only to 2 levels, and we most probably have 7 levels. So, in some aspects, we are still at the beginning. So it is not too quick. If we had enough money, we would hire 500 people instead of 15. That's how much we have right now. And then 500 people would work 7 days a week, 2 shifts on all sides, and we would go much, much quicker. Of course, always thinking, not to do something wrong, so the future generations will, complain about it. But I think the major question in our case is, what was the purpose? If it was energy amplifier, what we can learn from those ancient builders? How they were manipulating with millions of tons of materials in order to get such a complex that would use the kinetic energy of underground water flows, quartz crystal, and the piezoelectrical effect. How they were playing with the electromagnetic fields, how they were getting very specific frequencies of ultrasound, how they were getting very high levels of orgone or life energy, how they were improving the life of the community, how they built a complex that will serve communities for thousands of years. So these are the questions that we have in mind. So even if we don't do much of the archaeological work, we still are getting some answers using different techniques and expertise. But I think what will remain after us is that archaeology is not enough to explain archaeological phenomena. We have to have interdisciplinary scientific approach. Classical sciences, archaeology, geology, anthropology, history, Egyptology, biology, paleontology, plus high-tech, geothermal, satellite, georadar, and so on, plus energy phenomena, plus medical experts, and so on, plus spiritual scientists. We have to stay open because every one of them is bringing us a piece, a little puzzle in this big picture. Those ancient builders, whether in Egypt, Peru, or China, or Tibet, or different places, they were very smart. And they were resolving the major question, the energy. You amplify the energy, you improve your health, your life, your most important liquids, and food, and so on. Same challenges that we have today. So it's not too quick. As long as we don't destroy stuff, we are fine. Yes, Elena.
At first, I have to apologize. With my English is not so good, but I have already 4 grandchildren. Yes, and it's definitely true. They are able to communicate with us and with each other on the telepathic way. Definitely proved. Yes. And my question is, what do you think about this special life in fifth dimension? Fifth dimension. You know, there is another spiritual senses ability to communicate, to realize your life, and it simply happened. You have to be fearless. You have to be sure about your creativity and so on. And what do you think about it? Like, I know the people who are able to live like that. I am one of them.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
Beautiful question. We are multi-dimensional beings, right? And this dimension is defined as a third dimension. There's length, width, and height. And some people say time, even though we could probably talk about that there's no time, there's just now. But some people say that time is a dimension as well. There are certain laws and rules that govern this experience, certain universal laws. Now, as you expand, because everything is expanding, as your heart expands, as your mind expands, you start changing the frequencies within your body as well. As you climb the frequencies, and you can probably talk to this even better and more, you start opening those windows of what Dr. Sam was talking about earlier, of what you hear. There are tools that you can use where you can actually hear, where your brain can adjust to the frequencies that are lower than the 20 hertz. Because again, an amazing tool that we have. Same with vision, same with other things. My personal view is that this fifth dimension is not a physical place.
No, definitely
it just has a
not.
good marketing behind it, so people are thinking, oh, it's a physical place, we're all going to fifth dimension. You can access it, just like you can access various dimensions. You can access lower dimensions, you can access higher dimensions. Now, the way you do this is by closing your eyes and going inside, instead of reacting to the external stimulus in our 5 senses. You close your eyes, you go inside, and then again, magic happens.
Yeah, so I am desiring.
So if we want to see better, we simply close our eyes.
Definitely, sir.
First of all, thank you so much for this question. Alejandra and I recorded a whole video on is the Earth splitting, because it's a big thing between 3D and 5D, and we wanted to assure everyone nobody's getting lost, no one is staying behind. And the most important concept is time is not linear, right? People tend to think of time as linear. And dimension, it's sort of like, that's why we started building a concept of the fractal, like the Russian nesting dolls, right? So dimensions, it's energies building and expanding. One of the ways that we like to explain it is third dimension. If you imagine you look through at the world through a keyhole, so it's very hard to see everything. Fifth dimension, it's sort of like opening the door, and you perceive so much more. And our children have this amazing ability to teach us that. And I think the sixth sense that most of us don't realize we have is our intuition, and that is the greatest gift that kids are showing us. And animals actually show us that this is a way to communicate, right? And it is about going inside, and it is about frequencies.
Yeah.
So yes, the more you attune to who you truly are, the easier it is to communicate with all these other realms.
It's like Samer spoke about it one time, walking meditation, so interactive, be alive in third dimension, and be completely connected every second of your life with others.
It's recognizing that we are living on heaven on earth. It's here.
Yeah.
We don't have to go anywhere. Just look at the beauty. This is heaven.
Yes.
And that is recognizing the magic that exists around you and within you. And that is the fifth dimension.
Good. Anyone else?
I just saw that I have to go back to USA. So, this is land of mine, but I have to go.
You have to go
I'm
to
traveling
USA.
back to my
All right.
husband and my other two children.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Um, if you talk about soul and like the soul will last forever, what about those people who were running those the pyramids and in ancient times? Those souls are probably incarnated with us and they are around us. What about
Well, you just
the
answered the
memories?
question.
It's the same question
You
for you
think
again.
there is a coincidence you are here tonight with all of us? That our paths just crossed for no reason? We are back to the place of crime.
Because I think it's much easier to go back to the memories than just bring all those scientists together and making a puzzle.
Yes and no, but this way it's more interesting. But yeah, you are right, because we have all the memories in our souls. We just need to go deep enough. You know, when I go to different archaeological sites around the world, especially those where you cannot get much of the scientific proofs, no organic materials, no tools, no traces of the builders, then I use what I call the focus meditation. And my questions are who, when, how, and why. And the first couple of seconds, the pictures and even movies, information I'm getting, it probably belongs to the original builders, and it's written somewhere in my soul.
And they are sitting around you at that moment.
Exactly. So yes, there are different ways how to obtain the knowledge, and that's one of the ways. And in our civilization, we are doing it our way, through the material science. But, for example, you can move stuff in different ways. The way we move, let's say, blocks of 50 tons, it's rather primitive because we invent a crane with a capacity of 100 tons. And then what we do, we fight gravitational force. And then we lift 50 tons. Different ways. In other ways, just to use the ultrasound frequency, which is capable of moving, lifting, installing. So there are always different ways. Another way would be just to ask politely block to move. So there are always different ways. And so like you said, we could meet and we could try to remember, or we simply go deep within and try to get information. Different ways. And you have to stay open.
But you have this group around you. You have a bunch of people who are remembering.
Yes, of course. They keep coming. All right. Anybody else? Yes.
I have a question for the lady. I'm sorry. If
Elena.
Elena. I'm sorry if it's too basic. You mentioned COVID or social media frequency. How do you measure that? Do you mean?
Alejandro and I, of course, it's a great question. We use scalar wave technology. We use several instruments to measure the frequency of places, people, businesses, you name it. Everything can be measured because the biofield stores information.
But how do is it
Using
like,
technology.
but you really measure the frequency of a virus or
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
How can you
Yes.
measure something that's not
Because everything emits information. Right? We are information. Whatever it is we're measuring is information. The stones, the trees, everything contains information. So we're like radio frequencies, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if no more questions, I thank you very much for coming. Enjoy your stay in Visoko, Bosnian Valley of Pyramids, our district. We are like beyond, above the reality here. We build our own reality, our own good positive energy. Thank you very much. God bless.
Bravo!